Welcome to the channel. CPM here. How you doing? It's Sunday. It's a beautiful day. It's really nice out. It's too warm. It's too warm to be in my studio, that's for sure. So I've decided to sit under the magnolia tree where it's a lot cooler. I'm very lucky to have that. Yeah, and do a video. So let's cut to it. I was sitting there a little while ago writing out my thoughts on simplifying a few things that I look at in along my investment journey. And one of the things I've mentioned quite a bit of, but never really sort of expressed my thoughts on, is inflation and money debasement and how that can affect my my investment journey and how I invest. So I thought I'd share that. Thought that'd be a really good idea to share that. So this isn't investment advice. I am not an advisor. I am not an expert in economics. I'm just a crazy old guy that has took a big interest in my personal investment journey and in learning about stuff. So yeah, let's share the simplicity of how I think, and hopefully it might be a little bit thought-provoking and make a few people think about what they're doing too. So I've got a bit of a, for a change, I've got the book out because I've got a lot of notes. But anyway, so I wanted to explain how I see inflation. The inflation, and I look at it all very simply, to be honest. You can make this rocket science or not rocket science, like anything in life. If you make it rocket science, and lots of people like to make things rocket science because it sells. But for me, I just look at it, really do a lot of research and try and delve down how I can fit this into a logical, simplistic way of looking at things. So inflation, basically inflation. What is inflation? And it's basically the cost of products and services. How much does it cost for people to invent things, create things that we need, like food, cars, transport, wherever you are in the world, whatever services you need, there's a cost to that, and there's an inflationary cost to that over time. So that's basically how I look at inflation. And then there's money debasement, which a lot of people don't really talk about overly. And that, for me, what did I put down? I said it's when money is produced into the economy, devaluing itself with every time it's duplicated. Not talked about enough, in my opinion. And I don't think it is, because it can have, during different economic cycles that we go through, it can have a massive effect. For example, during the 2020 flu season, the problems we had there, then, you know, I'm led to believe, there's no reason not to believe it, that the US, you know, printed off £6-7 trillion dollars. The UK government was something like 800 billion, which is an immense amount of money. So how does that debase? Well, you've got your base money, and the easiest way I can explain that is, there we go. How do we debase this and devalue it? And that's easy. If you've just got one, and all of a sudden we think we need to add another one, then the more ones that we add devalues that, it debases it. It means it's not the whole base value of the currency or whatever is devalued, and it's debased. So 1 becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes 4, all depends on how much is printed, of course, becomes 5, becomes 6, becomes 7, becomes 8, becomes 9, etc. Get my point? So this original one isn't 1 anymore, it's 9, and so it can never have that same value unless they take it away. And if they're not taking it away and they're just adding to it, then it's going to be debased over time, every time they print. and that has a massive effect on what we do in investment terms, if that makes sense. So that's an important one. That's a really important one to understand. That isn't inflation. That's purely just adding more to one. One becomes two, becomes three, four, five. And then when you're looking at adding 7 trillion, if you can get your head around what $1 trillion is, or 800 billion pounds is, that original amount that was out there has been debased so many times. So there's more of it. And if there's more of it, the value of it has to, over time, depreciate. So it debases itself, which is different to inflation. Totally different. I'm sure there's people that will understand economics a hell of a lot more. I'm sure there's so many different things that can change that. But from a simplistic point of view, which is I'm all about simplicity, getting my head around those two things has helped me a lot. So I wrote down, understanding both will help you try to invest your hard-earned money into assets that hopefully appreciate at a higher rate than inflation and debasement over a period of time. And that's really important. That's extremely important, because if you're just working only against inflation, you're not taking into consideration global economic situations that are debasing that currency that we're using as well. So it's really important. It's really important. So I put down an example, and I'm going to use silver, but it applies to any asset really. If we take inflation at 5% and debasement of the money supply at 5% per year, depending on the economic environment we're living in, but I think that's pretty fair. You can adjust these figures. You're looking at 10%. You're looking at 10% that your value is losing, depending on the time we're investing. But as a rule, roughly, I look at it now as if I'm not taking into consideration trying to beat a 10% return over a period of time, keeping an eye on the economic situation of what's going on, then I am not really improving what I'm trying to do as an investment, if that makes sense. It's a simple way of putting it. So then from a silver point of view, gold, whatever, then I just using silver as an example, then the spot price will have to rise at the same rate to keep up. And if it doesn't, I don't look at it as premium anymore. Premium's a bonus to me. And regarding precious metals, it's spot price that makes the difference. That's the base level consistent thing that will go up and down. So I use that. So yeah, I know there's lots of other things, but I keep it really simple. So I look at the spot price, and when I say spot price of silver, it could be spot price of gold, spot price of Bitcoin, any assets, any stocks and shares, houses, that's what I call that spot price. That valuation is a spot price on a house as a rule. So that gives me a real good understanding of, am I beating what's going on? Am I doing better? If I'm trying to improve 10% a year, to really get a good return, I need to be looking at 14% a year. What's going to give me 14%? What can I put in a portfolio that, as a rule, over time, we get fluctuations every day, but over time, this is over time, and that period of time is down to you, all of us as individuals, what we're trying to do. But that's really important. So I'm trying to beat 10%, as a rule per year. If I can hold 10%, it means hopefully my portfolio is holding value against it all. But obviously we want to try and beat that. So I use that. Hopefully that makes sense. So then, as I said, so when you look at past history during your educational process, we can see whether the asset is performing to the economic climates we go through in time. The maths is easy, to be honest. So yeah, it's very easy to go back in time and just look at, oh yeah, look, my asset has gone up 1%, 2%, 10%, 15%, 20%. This is relevant to me now. It's relevant, obviously. I'm just talking from my point of view. It's now, as I explain in a minute, it's now relevant because we're looking at money debasement and inflation, because that's having an effect over that period of time as well. So looking back's good, looking forward's good, but taking into consideration everything that's going on that is affecting what's going to affect our value down the line is even more important. So you need to know it, or you don't. It's up to you. That's what I do. You do you. But just sharing it. So when we hear hedge, when we hear the saying it's a hedge against inflation, we can now have a better understanding of whether we are getting a true hedge or not, because we're taking into consideration everything else that's going on. And I put down, obviously there are so many metrics that can change specific values, but as a rule, I find keeping things simple to work from helps tremendously, and that really does help tremendously, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to improve what we're doing. And then I've put down, once I got my head around this, I then started to look at asset value very differently, and I do now. I look at asset value so differently. And I put down, as an example, using silver again, I now look at 1 ounce as 1 ounce. I look at one ounce of gold as 1 ounce. I look at one house as one house. One Bitcoin or a piece of Bitcoin or one share as one share. One crypto as one crypto. And not, going back to silver, 1 ounce as currently at £22. I don't look at it as £22 anymore at all. And this is, as I just explained, it's the same applies to all assets. So from there, what I've done is I've written down, then I begin to accumulate hard sound assets, not for their currency value, but for their store of wealth value, which can only really be measured in the hardness of them, not the exchange value of them. It's a real balancing act with your mindset. It really is. And 3 years down the line, I'm beginning to get that mindset differently to suit my needs. And hopefully this will just make a few people think about their assets and their goals in a different way. And I just put at the bottom, there's a lot of truth in this saying, asset rich, money poor. I used to hear that a lot. Asset rich, money poor. It now makes so much sense. And I put under there, you don't often see asset rich people living a poor life. You don't. Because they get it. And that's took me a fair amount of while. And the struggle for me to get that is that we are brought up constantly thinking in our currency terms as value, not asset terms as value. Which is why I've, through my research, and I'm not going to go into it now, see Bitcoin as a very different thing to a lot of people. And this is why the wealthy and the big money is starting to see Bitcoin as a very different thing. Very different thing in this coming electronic era that we are quickly going into. Pardon me. So, yeah, it's interesting. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to do a little write-up on this as well. Probably put it somewhere in Stacker Social. As I said, you do you. All I would do is try and keep things simple, because I like simple. I really do like simple. Simple is this. In my journey, I've watched so much. I've consumed so much. And quite often when I start to switch off is when I'm over overcomplicating things. That's when I've recognized, well, why am I switching off of this? Why am I changing my mind? Why is my mindset going? It's because I'm overcomplicating things. So then I go back to basics, and the basics are simplicity. Go back to simplicity and rebuild your mindset. And then all of a sudden, something new clicks, and you have that moment. I call it a, excuse my language, fuck me moment. And yeah, all of a sudden you see a change, and you see a change in your portfolio, and you relax more, and it changes. So it's a great journey. Make sense of it, don't make sense of it, ask me questions. I know there's lots of things outside of it all, but I just like the simplicity of it all more than anything. Good luck. Hope this helps and makes some sense. By all means, ask me some stuff, and I'll try and do more videos or whatever. But yeah, just think about it. Just think about the simplicity of what's going on and what it is, and you know, do you carry your research into that, and then see where you go with your own portfolio. Good luck. Cheers. Bye bye.